the world's most watched professional wrestling news program. Welcome.
Wanted to see if I can get that done.
To our downtown Milwaukee studios. Welcome to PWRshow.com and all of you watching us all over our television markets on TV. This is the Pro Wrestling Report. I am Dameon Nelson, sitting here alongside the man named
Log Cabin Jack.
I didn't realize you were into logs.
Once I built a Lincoln log. Once I left the log.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Pro Wrestling Report. How you been, Meathead?
I'm still matted up.
Really? Are you abusing, or are you still taking for non-recreational purposes?
Prescription.
Let's start off with the news. World Wrestling Entertainment news first. And you saw him a couple of weeks ago on Raw. We talked about him on last week's edition of the Pro Wrestling Report. Ted DiBiase. No more money for him, as he has just been released from WWE in his role as a producer. He was released again a couple of days ago. Details are unknown at this time as to why he was released. Now, a producer, if you will, is the people formerly known as agents in WWE. Now, DiBiase may be gone, but in addition to the team on a 30-day probationary basis is the Reverend Tully Blanchard.
Wow. Where did they find him?
Perhaps a little bit of the reason for the nostalgia from Ric Flair on Raw this past Monday night, saying he's always been backed by people, whether it be the Evolution or the Four Horsemen. Tully Blanchard now trying out, if you will, for a role as a producer with WWE.
Wow, I cannot believe they dug him up. What, did he have dust on him? I mean, I thought Tully Blanchard was gone.
Now, for those of you who don't know, these producers, if you will, are the people who keep the boys in line, if you will, and produce the segments, not the television segments so much, but produce wrestlers and matches.
While they're on the road, they're babysitters. Honestly and truly, they're babysitters. They're there to make sure the guys meet interview times.
You need a producer.
They're there to meet interview times. They're there to make sure they get to the arena on time. They're there to make sure they get their plane tickets. They're in their rental cars. That's what they do. They babysit. I mean, Stenko Malenko, he's a producer right now, too.
The man who once took charge of the Divas in WWE and the Cruiserweight division, which is seemingly gone by the wayside. Who is the Cruiserweight champion right now?
That'd be Gregory Helms.
Is that where you got that idea from, for that facial hair there?
No. I got it from Sugar Shane Helms.
Oh, because that was back when he was closer to the Hardys, and since you're a Jeff Hardy mark now.
Nope. The Color Breaker.
Rob Van Dam makes statements regarding the new direction and the new philosophy of ECW and says if you're not watching it, you're missing out, saying he's proud to be a part of the new ECW, and to those who have dismissed it because it is not the ECW of old, give it a chance, come on back, watch it, or you're just missing out. Poignant words from RVD, a member of the original ECW regime, and a man who the company is somewhat being built around, however not very closely, but being built around now on Sci-Fi Network.
You know, he's the leader of the face faction. He is the most liked guy without the... Well, he's getting a push, you see. He's pushed up against this manufactured champion that...
known as the...
Where's Big Show? Sorry.
Maybe that's where you got the idea from the beard. We're just trying to get to the... I'm an investigative reporter.
And I talked to Creative, and I told them they could stick it right up their porthole.
Until it's time to renew those contracts.
Just go.
So the new ECW, a success in RVD's mind, and on a very heavy momentum leading into last week when Test and Bob Holly pretty much stuck up the joint on a match that went too long. And the
matter of fact, I believe on the top 5 segment from last week, there was a man that was in this studio that says, "Good God Almighty, on my top 5."
Test was in my top 5.
He had a phenomenal match.
Now keep in mind the top 5 is a mere reflection of the previous 7 days. Thus, the great match he had last week on ECW
was an aberration.
The top 5 last week. Now, if you look at my this week's top 5, which I wrote down in advance, you'll notice Test is not on that list.
Okay.
The crowd was chanting, "This is boring, boring, boring." Now, does that say anything for if that same match was put on in front of an ECW core old school crowd compared to a SmackDown WWE crowd? Would the reaction have been the same, do you think?
Absolutely, because of the work rate in the ring.
Really?
And the lack of drama.
Was the match too long, or was it really the work rate?
It was too bad.
Okay. You're entitled to your opinion.
Thank you.
That particular episode of ECW scored a 1.6 rating, essentially flat with what it's been doing in prior weeks. Speaking of flat, WWE AM Raw with a .8 rating and about 2% of the television viewing audience tuned into it is flat as well. However, SmackDown's climbing up with a 2.3 rating last week, and Raw is going down from the family reunion special down to a 3.6 rating. Now, keep in mind,
nothing special about Raw anymore.
There was something very special about this past week's Raw, of which I was privileged enough to be in attendance at the Allstate Arena in Chicago, Illinois. What's missing? Now, we have these two distinctly different brands, Raw and SmackDown. Two distinctly different brands. Yet on this past Monday's Raw, you had Big Show, obviously leading into the main event at CYber Sunday. But then you had one of the greatest champions in recent memory. The champion from SmackDown with his Queen Sharmell, King Booker.
I like to refer to him as Booker T and his sidekick.
All hail King Booker!
And his sidekick, Paisley.
Because she's black?
No, because that was her gimmick name in WCW.
When she was a?
When she was not only a Nitro girl, she was also a manager.
Booker T, King Booker, this past Monday's Raw, I thought was a solid effort after watching it not only live, but also watching it on the broadcast version.
Why? Oh, why? 2 weeks in a row was Kevin Federline on my television.
Why? Oh, why? Because look at the publicity they got the prior week. Much like when David Arquette was a champion of your organization.
He was a great champion.
Much like when David Arquette was a champion of your organization, WWE saw publicity and took advantage of it. K-Fed, actually, not horrible, playing the role of a wrestling antagonist. Not horrible. You'd rate him horrible.
Sucked!
Because he's K-Fed.
No.
Because you're jealous because he's up and he's
no.
Oops and Britney's again.
No. Because I watched what he was doing. I watched to critique what he was doing. He was awful. I didn't buy it.
What about his trip and fall? Like from straight out of a horror movie.
That was awful. Because Cena, you could tell that he wasn't supposed to trip and fall like they do in the horror movies. Because Cena stopped. If Cena wanted
Collaborate and listen. Cena's back with a brand new
edition.
edition.
If Cena wanted him, he would have just picked him up from there. But you knew that the spot was Cena was going to walk all the way, and then the guys were coming back out. He wasn't supposed to trip and fall either. I understand things happen. Accidents happen. Get off my TV!
Backstage at Raw this past Monday night from Chicago, Illinois at the Allstate Arena was a man we talked about last week right here in this very program where Meathead said he did not see this individual leaving his full-time job as a personal trainer down in Florida because of the money that he was making doing that and the light schedule that he had when he was in TNA. But backstage, apparently jockeying for a position with the organization that is WWE was none other than Monty Brown.
Period. Thank you.
Serious discussions can now begin about Monty Brown and the Pounce, if you will, in WWE. Is he Ahmed Johnson 2006? And I'm not just saying that because he's black. Or is there a spot for a Monty Brown in WWE?
Period. Yes, there's a spot for Monty Brown in WWE.
Did Shivani have it this bad?
What's that?
Did Shivani have it this bad?
Yes. You know what? Tony Schiavone.
Tony who?
Did his job. You could see it in the man's face, though. When
there's his maneuver.
Yeah, maneuver. Tony Schiavone did his job the best he could until the company became unbearable.
Which was about 1999. They had a 3-year run, 96 to 99. That company being WCW. For you newer wrestling fans, I know you may not understand that was a now defunct wrestling organization that this one supported.
I'm reading Eric Bischoff's book.
Which, congratulations
controversy
on A, buying it, B, learning how to read, and C, getting through half of it.
In 2 days.
C, you can do with a little motivation, a little drive, a little determination.
Because it's interesting. What you WWE fans may not know...
What do you mean you WWE fans, Ross Perot?
What you WWE fans may not know is the reason wrestling is today is because of Eric Bischoff.
Ooh. Now, you know them's Spiden's words. Spell it out, lay it out, explain what you just said, young man.
If Eric Bischoff would not have been the protagonist to WWF at the time, WWF would have stayed in their current funk.
They would have kept the F in?
They would have kept the F in, exactly. Would have stayed in their current funk and would not have had to revolutionize and changed their product as well. If not for the WCW and Eric Bischoff, there'd be no DX. There would be no Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah, because Eric fired him because he didn't recognize what talent was.
Absolutely. And as my Uncle Eric once said, and I know I'm saying that now that you used to say it. As my Uncle Eric
Everybody
once said,
comes around eventually.
Okay. As my Uncle Eric once said, it was probably one of the biggest mistakes we ever made. But by me doing that, it helped Steve become motivated to become Stone Cold.
So, back to Monty Brown.
Yeah, great. He'd end up on SmackDown, mid-card.
After the big pop after showing up, do you think there is some merit to the rumor that WWE may just hire him to say, hey, not only is TNA taking our people, but we're taking theirs?
I've, again, reading the book, I've been led into an interesting philosophy.
Philosophy. Ladies and gentlemen, philosophy by Meathead.
When Eric was signing talent
$3 million.
95,
$20 million.
96.
$40 million.
He was told that he
$30
was stealing talent. But when WWE did the exact same thing 2 to 3 years ago, how come they weren't stealing?
I don't believe there were many situations where they just paid people more than they were ever worth
I didn't say money.
to acquire them.
I never said money.
You did. That's why WCW was accused of stealing people. When you offer someone 4, 5, 6, 7 times
They were
more,
offering
then
everybody
they're
that amount of money.
Then they're making
A guy
for
like
organization.
Tough Tom from Disorderly Conduct,
Whatever. Where is he now?
He's here in Milwaukee. He's going to be wrestling, actually, I believe, in one of the local shows coming up in the next couple months. A guy like Tough Tom from Disorderly Conduct, who is from the Milwaukee area. Do you know he made 6 figures? And how many times did you see him a year? They paid everybody that way. They didn't just pay the money to get those names out of WWE. They paid everybody that money because that's how it was. So when WWE started pulling the talent back, your Jericho, your Big Show, Jarrett, I guess, and then the Radicals, and then the rest of the guys. DDP showed up before, too long. How come that wasn't stealing them?
Why do you still hate? Should I get you a pink pearl eraser so you can erase the hate?
Nope. I'm not
CYber
hating.
Sunday, the pay-per-view from the
I'm
only major
initiating.
league organization that's around today, WWE,
Say it again.
coming up on November 5. The only major league organization that's around today, WWE.
Not true.
What's the other one?
It's called TNA.
They are...
Wrestling is on the uprise. You know why? I finally have a Fed, not a K-Fed, but a Fed that I can back.
Which is?
TNA.
Why?
Because, you know what? I did watch the pay-per-view this previous Sunday.
Bound for Glory from Detroit, Michigan.
It was a very, very typical WCW pay-per-view.
Does that mean they'll be out of business in 4 years?
With the exception of the crowd was hot.
Even though you couldn't hear them.
Yeah, the audio mixing was terrible. With the exception that Jake the Snake crap that happened in the middle of Monsters Ball.
I think when he woke up that morning, he not only crapped, but continued to crap all
And I think
along.
he was wearing an adult diaper. Well, it depends. But
he's been practicing that one for the last 6 weeks. It just got cleared for use by the legal team today.
Thank you. Also, the very light main event, but the rest of the card, oh my God, those guys are phenomenal, to take a word from AJ Styles.
CYber Sunday. We'll talk more about Bound for Glory in just a few minutes and give you our thoughts on that particular pay-per-view. CYber Sunday coming up November 5th from WWE. A couple of matches have been announced. Truly interactive pay-per-view. They tell you who voted for what. Believe it if you want.
Let me
Don't
ask
know
you,
if it's true or false. But
is it worked? I mean, obviously you vote, and obviously we see the number of votes, but is it manipulated?
Even if it is, it's a successful concept for WWE, I think. Formerly known as Taboo Tuesday, an event that emanated right here from where we come from, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Now CYber Sunday. Going up the card, the Samoan Submission Machine. Is that what he's called?
I think it's
Umaga will be going up against one of 3 men. Either the Sandman from ECW, Kane from SmackDown, or Chris Benoit from SmackDown. Now the votes, in my opinion, will lead towards Chris Benoit. There's still some hotness to his return. We've seen Umaga and Kane. However, I'm intrigued by the Sandman option.
Sandman. We'll get into this a little bit in just a moment, but what happened to him? He looks leaner and meaner,
He's an in-betweener.
but he's got no I didn't say that. Sandman, what was that crappy promo that we just saw on Tuesday? What was it?
It wasn't bad.
You should go back to not talking.
Who do you think's going to get picked in that particular matchup?
Benoit.
Chris Benoit versus Maga. We won't even talk about winners because there's so many variables in these matchups that there's no point to it really. But the World Tag Team Champions, the Spirit Squad. There's a little bit of dissension in the Spirit Squad now. Kenny, the standout star, of course, Ken Doan, seemingly walking away from the Spirit Squad this past Monday on Raw.
That'll go on for a couple weeks.
Be that as it may, the Tag Team Champions of the World, the Spirit Squad, go up against Ric Flair, and fans choose between one of three people he came out with on this past Monday's Raw. Sergeant Slaughter, Roddy Piper, or America.
He's a man.
Dreams. The only thing we needed, two things to complete that.
By the way.
Were Sapphire
Sapphire's passed on.
and Polka Dots.
Yeah, she's passed on, so let it go.
I believe that Roddy Piper is going to be the one picked because I think he resonates most with fans of today to team up with Ric Flair in that matchup against the Spirit Squad.
In fact, the last time we saw Roddy Piper, well, at least in a somewhat permanent role, was when he was stealing some young man's leg.
And then the match that everyone's going to order the pay-per-view to see. The Intercontinental Champion, Jeff Hardy, will go one-on-one for the Intercontinental Championship against one of these three men. Either Carlito, Shelton Benjamin, or Johnny Nitro.
It's going to be Johnny Nitro.
Really?
Got to get Melina's boobies in there.
I think it's going to be Carlito. Because if not, it wouldn't be cool.
Mm-hmm. How come Chris Masters isn't involved in that?
He's a cruiserweight now. Shawn Michaels and Triple H, otherwise known as D-Generation X, will team up to go up against Randy Orton and Edge, the anti-DX faction. But there will be a special guest referee, and it will be one of three men. Either the owner, the CEO, the president of WWE, Vince McMahon. The man who just wrote Controversy Creates Cash, Eric Bischoff, who's silver again, or Jonathan Coachman. I think it's going to be McMahon picked to referee that match. I want it to be Eric Bischoff.
I'd like to see Bischoff, too.
With the history McMahon has with DX, the unended history that he has with DX, I think the fans are going to most want to see him involved in that matchup.
Unfortunately, it's going to be Vince.
WWE Champion John Cena versus World Heavyweight Champion King
Booker T.
versus ECW World Champion The Big Show. Fans will decide which of those three championships will be on the line. Now, I am on record as saying this is the matchup that should be headlining WrestleMania. If you're going to do a champion of champions, you're going to bring all three belts together, all three champions together. You want to do that at the biggest show of the year. You want to do it where it has meaning, and that is at WrestleMania.
They teased that last year. Actually, Kurt Angle teased it where they were thinking about putting the two belts together.
A unification, if you will.
Let's unify
after the failed efforts that they had in 2001 when they put that weight on Chris Jericho's shoulder.
Oh, no, the belts got unified.
Failed effort.
It's not a failed effort.
It was almost as bad as the Diesel years.
No. When you give the main event time and slots to somebody other than your heavyweight champion, that's what causes the failure.
They were on top of the card.
Chris Jericho was...
Jericho and Triple H, they were on top of the card.
When he was running with the belt, he won it at what? Survivor Series?
It was
Survivor
Vengeance
Series?
or whatever
Survivor
the December
Series?
pay-per-view was that year.
Okay. He won it at Survivor Series, and then defended the belt in December, January, February, and March.
Because he beat Austin, then Rock in one night. I believe it was Vengeance before it was removed.
Sure. At Survivor Series, he won his belt, and then in December he defended it. January he defended it. But also in January, the man with the big schnoz came out, and you knew that he was going to crap all over. I miss that song. Yeah.
You were saying?
You knew the man with the big schnoz was going to crap all over Chris Jericho's title run. You just knew it.
Go to Ticketmaster.com. You can get your WrestleMania tickets right now before they go on sale. The code to use, folks, is LIONS06. LINOS 06 is the code to use to purchase your WrestleMania tickets early in advance at Ford Field before they have a sellout when they get released to the public per general on November the 11th. Jeff Jarrett, face turn now seems to be a lock. We talked about it last week on this program. You saw on Impact last night the beginning of promos. Actually, you saw it a couple of weeks ago when BG James was talking about how Jeff Jarrett is misunderstood and he's gone through so many problems. And he has. His wife has almost died. He's had several issues that he has worked through and still showing up every week. But I don't know if the fans are going to buy that. As I said last week, there is so much hatred for Jeff Jarrett that a face run for him is nearly out of the question.
Here's what it's going to take. It's going to take some time off that camera. We can't hear or talk about him for 6 months. Then bring him back.
We want to know what you think, folks. Send us an email to mail@pwrshow.com and tell us, do you think Jeff Jarrett has a chance as a run as a good guy or a face in TNA? We'll talk about those right next week here on the program.
Struggling to buy it.
Bound for Glory. Speaking of buy it, that was the pay-per-view offering by TNA. Their WrestleMania, if you will, positioned well opposite of WrestleMania in October. Done in Detroit, outside of the Orlando studios where TNA Impact is taped. A good show, 3 hours of wrestling, headlined, in my opinion, by 2 matchups. The first of which being Chris Sabin versus Senshi. A phenomenal matchup. And speaking of phenomenal, the other match I think headlined that card was the Six Sides of Steel match, where it was LAX going up against Christopher Daniels and AJ Styles. LAX winning the tag team titles in a spot fest that was so perfectly executed. It is one of the 2 top matches.
We mentioned this a long
night
time ago when we were talking about the beginning of LAX. We care about what Conan does again.
Yes. And that is difficult to do, folks.
It is an amazing
because he's
thing.
Conan.
It's Conan who thinks he's the be-all, end-all of Mexican wrestling.
There is so much passion. There is so much realism behind the LAX gimmick that they are successful week in and week out. And the brutality of that matchup, where I thought AJ Styles' neck was broken after the finisher that caused the end of the match, and the sailing across the ring off the steel cage that AJ did, and Christopher Daniels, 2 amazing athletes, 4 great athletes in this matchup, taking it to the top of the card, in my opinion.
Suburb. Bringing the card down. Jake the Snake Roberts. Bringing the card down.
They couldn't even get him a referee shirt.
He said,
I won't be a referee. I don't like stripes.
It's got a little pocket right here for Jack Daniels.
I don't like stripes. But what I will be is the guide in the labyrinth to your mind.
And really, do fans today
that?
no? Do fans today really know why Jake doesn't like stripes? Because he kept saying, "You know why I don't like stripes?
I don't like stripes because I'm an alcoholic. I'm a pill popper. And if you watch me on the mat, you're going to see what happened in my life."
It was Larry Zbyszko's legitimate last night with the company as he lost that match to Eric Young, who I'm liking more and more every day. Yes. To Eric Young, Zbyszko gone from TNA. Who's going to miss him?
Who's Larry Zbyszko?
Y2J. You saw him and his band Fozzy do the video
Thank you for
Bound
coming
for Glory.
back, Chris. I missed you, buddy.
Chris Jericho, seemingly a very prominent part of TNA. Chris Jericho has addressed that issue and says he has no intention at this time, but you never know what will happen regarding a signing with TNA.
I want to do my Jake the Snake impression again if I could.
You really like that, don't you?
Yeah.
I thought I was doing really good.
The championship committee member, which is one of the clumsiest titles in wrestling ever, Jim Cornette's going to take a couple of weeks off, maybe a couple of months off from regular duties in wrestling to heal himself.
Who's going to be the authority figure?
Maybe that one guy from New York who saved WCW.
I hope that guy doesn't come on because his beard looks like mine.
Eric Bischoff says in a recent interview that he feels TNA can compete, but not with WWE, at least not yet. A statement that Kurt Angle, the newest member of TNA, actually agrees with. But in 2 years, what are you going to say? If you look at TNA 2 years ago, they were still doing the monthly pay-per-views, weekly pay-per-views, I believe. Now it's a company that is certainly a formidable competitor to wrestling organizations and is certainly a clear number 2. But when you take WWE,
So you're saying they're a major league?
You take TNA
federation?
and you take the UFC, you've got 3 major contenders in the battle for pro wrestling fans.
Why do you throw UFC in the pro wrestling?
I think that there are a lot of wrestling fans who are following UFC a lot more closely than they have in the past, as evident by the ratings it's been getting on Spike TV lately.
You can't say that unless you did a.
Oh, I just did, boy.
You can't say that unless you did a research on why
The
you watch this, do
interns
you watch
did a
this,
study.
do you
They
watch
did
this.
a Gallup poll, and they did ask, select one viewer. And scientific margin of error is about plus or minus 18%, but there was a study done. Did you not receive a call from the interns?
What I did was I watched the whole UFC thing, and
Couple of notes, folks. The wrap-ups are back on the Pre-WR Show website.
Pre-WR or PWR?
PWR Show website. The wrap-ups are back after WWE Raw, ECW on Tuesday nights, and TNA on Thursday nights. SmackDown's got to get better before we spend time on it.
SmackDown's got to be decent enough for
Tune
us
on
to
over to
watch it,
PWRshow.com for those wrap-ups done by yours truly, telling you about what happened on the show and what we think thought about the show. That will start up again on after Monday's Raw. And again, you can only find that at PWRshow.com. The Daily Dose is now PWR Daily. Wildly successful last week. PWR Daily will continue, and you can join Frank and his special friends, which will be joining him this week on the PWR Daily. I almost called it that other name. Every day, we bring you now daily content, video content on PWRshow.com.
Is there any porn in it?
There is also a special section of PWRshow.com. It is what I feel are the greatest things in the world today. It's called the D-List. There's been a recent addition to the D-List. Make sure you tune on over to the D-List at PWRshow.com to find out what is on that wacky list of things. Speaking of wacky, folks, Meathead has a trivia question for you guys, a trivia question special this week, because if you're joining us in the market of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where SmackDown is emanating from this Sunday night at the Bradley Center, and ECW as well, we've got tickets, actually right here, we've got tickets for SmackDown this Sunday night. If you're able to answer Meathead's trivia question and send us an email to mail@pwrshow.com, that's MAIL, at pwrshow.com, we will pick 2 lucky winners to win 2 sets of tickets to SmackDown this Sunday night at the Bradley Center in Milwaukee. And as Meathead said, ECW also being taped. And the question is,
for the tickets,
these here.
who has won the most WWE/WWF titles in the history of the company?
Ooh. Not many will get that one. That's a toughie.
As a bonus,
He is no longer with us, by the way.
as a bonus, if you get the number of championships that that person held, and by the way, thanks for spoiling it, could have been a woman, but no, it's a guy, thanks. If you get the number of championships right, I will throw something else in.
Mail at pwrshow.com. I don't want to know what else he's going to throw in, but you can win 2 tickets to SmackDown this Sunday night in Milwaukee. It is for Thursday or Friday night SmackDown, taping early to avoid the Halloween holiday is WWE. Folks, it's been a wild ride, but this show's over.
That's not good, because I got some dancers outside.
That's this week's edition of the Pro Wrestling Report. Make sure you tune in to the Daily Dose. Meathead Frank, myself, hosting bits and pieces of the Daily PWR Daily. I can't teach no dog new tricks. Right here on PWRshow.com. And if you're joining us on the television airwaves in Milwaukee, Topeka, or you'll also
Tacoma, Washington, to see those. Thank you.
just after the Pro Wrestling Report goes on the air. So stay tuned if you're watching on TV. Thanks for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. Any parting shots?
I like to see it.
Thanks for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you next week right here on the world's most watched professional wrestling news program, PWR.